Hi friends, family. My father's father wrote a book. He wrote 3 books, but he wrote a book called 2nd Battalion about his time served in World War I. And I would like to read to you from page 154 and 155 about a passage that really moves me every time I read it. Hopefully I'll make it through this time. So, they are in a French wheat field, and they're about to take the wheat field, or try to take the wheat field. The lieutenant checked his watch and gave the forward signal. We leapt from the holes, clambered over the low embankment, and entered the wheat field. There was now no barrage ahead. Any Germans awaiting us had not been disturbed, only alerted. The wheat was breast high and sprinkled with millions of bright red poppies. The 2nd Battalion was finally in front, making the assault. Unaccountably, we were still in squad columns rather than a line of skirmishers, as one might expect in the first wave of an attack. The only skirmishers were Company H, a few yards ahead of us. The field, half a mile across, is higher in the center than either its east or west ends. As we advanced slowly toward the east, heads and shoulders bobbing above the ripe grain, I saw before us, as we topped the rise, 2 long rows of tall, slim poplars running along either side of the paved road. I could see open fields beyond the road, but no enemy was in sight. No shells were falling, no guns were firing. A big maneuver after all? No, it could not be. With every step we took, we were recovering French soil that had been seized at great cost by the German onslaughts of 6 weeks ago. They couldn't be about to hand it all back without resistance. But where were they? When we were 100 yards from the road, a machine gun, in an emplacement near the highway, spoke a few experimental rounds. Private Miller Fife, still following me, was drilled through the lungs. I heard him grunt, glanced back, and saw he had already fallen, lying in a pool of blood that matched the puppies. The 3 men behind Fife stopped. Corporal Alsobrook shouted for them to come on, and when they seemed reluctant to relieve a man shot down in front of them, he called to the lieutenant that Fife was shot, and some of the men were stopping to help him. The officer ordered them to come on. Lieutenant Wisenot was out in front of his platoon. "Keep your lines straight, men," he called, as though on a drill field. "Up a little on the left." None of the men seemed to be excited. Why should they be advancing behind an officer like that? A German plane flew over, very low, and on reaching the waves of infantry, turned back toward the east. He'll go back and tell their artillery where we are, I thought, and I fired at him. A real for sure target at last. A dozen others also fired, but we had received no instruction in firing at fast-moving targets, and he was probably untouched. That shot of mine was notable. It proved to be the only one I ever fired in actual battle, and I missed. It was the only plane of either side I saw during the entire battle. The machine gun by the roadside now opened up in earnest. The gunner commenced firing to his left along the road and slowly transversed his weapon to his right, sweeping all that part of the field. We all lay down, all that is, except Lieutenant Wisenot, who probably wanted to keep his lines straight, and I could tell how far the gun was turned on its quadrant by the yelps of pained surprise as the men were hit, and scores of them were yelping. I could hear them clearly, despite the chatter of the machine gun, and before I had time to think of the significance of the approach of those yelps, I let one out too. And that's how I knew it was from surprise as well as pain, although the latter was sharp enough. The pain was in my left chest where I had been hit before, and when I realized, as before, that I was very much alive, I began throwing equipment like mad in all directions, intent only on seeing how quickly I could get out of that accursed wheat field. But this gunner was a good man on the Kaiser's team. After swinging his weapon all the way to the right, covering the whole field to the top of the center rise, he proceeded to swing it back to his left, sweeping the fields again. Few men really expect to get hit in battle. It's always the other fellow, just as everyone expects other people, but never themselves, to be involved in car crashes. I had been calm enough, hearing the bullets coming and the wounds from the stricken men coming closer and nearer. But now, on the second run, already hit, my calmness deserted me, and I experienced the same abject terror I had seen on the faces of the 2 German soldiers earlier in the day. On the first sweep, it had seemed that I could not be hit. On the return, it seemed that I could not be missed. So many bullets gave out their wicked zip so near me, I was sure I must be drilled again and again. For many years I would be able to close my eyes and listen and hear vividly the bullets zipping between my legs, and after half a century I can recall with a startling clearness how a bullet sounds when it is very, very close. It was surely a miracle that I wasn't hit again. I had rid myself of everything but helmet and gas mask, and got up to walk toward the rear just after the gunner had finished, when I witnessed his end. A Yank soldier had reached the highway, and being then out of the wheat, he was able to see the man in the machine gun emplacement. He raised his Springfield and picked him off as casually as if he were shooting a bottle off a fence post. Yes, that German gunner did his stuff before he died. Of my squad of 7, 6 were hit, although none was killed. I've never marveled that so many were hit. I could never understand that one was missed. Jim Alsobrook took a bullet through his hand. Walter Steels got one through his foot. Miller Fife was wounded most severely, but he survived. However, 5 of my friends in other squads didn't throw off their equipment and hurry out of the wheat. They just remained there, lying among the poppies, waiting the parties that go over battlefields later to take care of such matters. I would have to learn who they were later.